And so we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy in the most pleasant way. In our time together tonight, there is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story, the story of a forgotten pulse of sleep that the world has long left behind. Before we drift too far, if you feel a connection to this place, you're welcome to leave a quiet like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you feel so inclined, you can let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's a quiet way of knowing we're resting together under different skies. And so, find that gentle darkness in your room, perhaps with a soft blanket pulled a little closer, as we begin our slow drift into tonight's tale. The first thing you notice is the light, or rather, the lack of it. You're standing at the edge of a small, plowed field, the soil still damp and fragrant from a day's work. The sun is not just setting, it's surrendering. It's a complete and total abdication of its power. There are no street altered waiting to take over its shift, no glowing rectangles in anyone's pockets, no distant, hazy aura from a city just over the horizon. When the sun leaves, it takes all of its light with it, and what it leaves behind is a darkness so profound, so thick, you feel as though you could reach out and touch it. The sky performs a final, spectacular show, a blaze of orange and violet that feels almost impossibly vivid. This, you realize, is what a sunset looks like without the competition of electric light. It's the main event, the grand finale of the day, and everyone, consciously or not, is watching. The birdsong is changing its tune, shifting from the busy chatter of midday to the more solitary calls of the evening. The air itself is growing cooler, carrying on it the scent of wood smoke from a nearby chimney. This is the great turning of the world, the daily signal that the time for outdoor labor is over. It's time to go inside. You turn and walk toward a small, simple house made of timber and dock. As you push open the heavy wooden door, the change is immediate. The last vestiges of twilight are cut off, and you are plunged into a warm, flickering gloom. The only source of light is the hearth at the far end of the room. A small, carefully managed fire glows with deep red and orange embers, casting long, dancing shadows that make the familiar shapes of the room seem alive. A single wooden table, a few stools, a loom in the corner, they all seem to sway and breathe in the unsteady light. This single fire is the heart of the home, its only source of heat and light, and it is guarded with an almost religious reverence. To let it go out is not just an inconvenience, it is small, local catastrophe. The darkness inside is a different beast from the darkness outside. It's a domestic darkness, filled with the soft sounds of settling in for the night, the rustle of straw, the clink of a wooden cup being set down, the low murmur of voices. You watch as a family member takes a thin piece of dried rush, dipped in fat, and lights it from the fire. This is a rush light, and its tiny, sputtering flame provides just enough illumination to see a face, or a bowl of stew, but not much else. It burns for maybe 20 minutes before it's gone. Light is a resource, a currency. You don't burn it frivolously. You don't trade a book by it unless the book is more valuable than the cost of the flame. As the evening wears on, the world outside goes completely silent and black. Someone secures the heavy wooden shutters over the windows. This isn't just for security against intruders of the true minus-legged variety. There was a widespread and deeply held belief that the night air itself was dangerous, not just cold, but actively unhealthy, filled with miasmas and vapors that could bring illness. Historians still debate the precise nature of this fear. Was it a practical response to dampness and insects, or a more superstitious dread of the unseen forces that held sway after dark? Whatever the reason, the result is the same. The house is now a sealed container, a tiny island of warmth and dim light in an ocean of absolute black. You realize that your modern eyes are almost useless here. You move slowly, your hands outstretched, navigating by memory, the kind of darkness that makes you acutely aware of how many sharp corners your furniture has. Your entire relationship with the world has been calibrated. Sound and touch have become your primary senses. You can hear the soft breathing of everyone in the room. You can feel the drafts of cool air that find their way through the cracks in the walls. This isn't the empty, passive darkness of a modern bedroom with blackout curtains. This is an active, living darkness, a presence that shapes every action and every thought. And as the fire is banked for the night, reduced to a bed of glowing coals to conserve fuel, even that small flicker of light is gone. Now, it is time for sleep. But it will be a sleep unlike any you've ever known. You make your way across the packed minus earth floor, your hands acting as guides in the near minus total blackness. Your destination is not a separate room, but a corner of this main living space, where the bed stands waiting. It's a simple, heavy wooden frame, and as your hand touches it, you can feel the coarse, splintery texture of the wood. There are no box springs here, no memory foam, no ergonomic support. Instead, as you press down on the sleeping surface, you hear a loud, distinctive rustle and feel a lumpy, unyielding surface beneath a thin linen sheet. This is your bed, and its primary component is straw. You are lying on what is essentially a large, rectangular sack of polyurethane, stuffed to the brim with dried grasses. It has all the forgiving softness of a burlap bag filled with kindling. You can feel individual stalks poking through the fabric, a constant, scratchy reminder of the bed's humble origins. Over the weeks and months, your body has created a shallow depression in the straw, a personalized hollow that you instinctively seek out each night. But it's a constant battle. The straw shifts and settles, and what was a comfortable valley one night can become a lumpy mountain the next. Every so often, the entire mattress has to be emptied out. The old, broken straw replaced with a fresh, sweet minus smelling supply. You breathe in. The scent is earthy and faintly sweet, the smell of a harvested field brought indoors. But there are other, more deliberate scents woven in. Tucked into the straw are small bundles of dried herbs, chamomile, lavender, maybe some mint. This isn't for luxury or aromatherapy in the way you might think of it. It's a practical measure. These herbs were believed to promote restful sleep, but more importantly, they help to mask the other, less pleasant smells of a mattress that was difficult to clean, and they were thought to repel some of the bed's other inhabitants. And yes, there are other inhabitants. You try not to think about them, but you know they are there. Fleas, mice, and other tiny creatures are simply a fact of life, a shared part of the sleeping experience for nearly everyone. It's one of the reasons that grander beds in wealthier homes often had heavy curtains, not just for warmth or privacy, but as a flimsy barrier against things that hopped and crawled in the night. The famous nursery rhyme, "Good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite," is a modern, sanitized echo of a much more immediate reality. The tight part, historians now believe, like you referred to the ropes of the bed frame, which needed to be pulled taut to prevent the mattress from sagging. A nightly chore for a firm night's sleep. You settle onto the mattress, and the whole structure groans in protest. The ropes that stretch across the frame, serving as a platform for the polyurethane, creak and strain with your weight. It's a familiar, almost comforting sound. The voice of the bed itself. But comfort is not its primary design principle. Durability is. This is a piece of furniture built to last, to be passed down, not to cradle you in a soft embrace. Historians, sifting through old wills and household inventories, are still piecing together the precise recipes for these beds. While straw was the most common filling for the common person, regional variations abounded. Some might have used dried leaves, others feathers from their own geese if they were fortunate, or even scraps of wool and rags. The bed was a microcosm of a family's wealth and resourcefulness. But the mattress is only half the story. You now turn your attention to the pillows, or rather, the bolsters. There isn't a soft, pliable pillow waiting for your head. Instead, there are several long, firm, densely packed cylindrical cushions. They feel almost solid, stuffed with everything from horsehair to compacted wool. You begin to arrange them. You don't place one flat on the bed. You prop them up, one against the other, creating a steep, high ramp against the wooden headboard. It is a deliberate and practiced construction. You lean back against this firm embankment. Your body is not lying flat, not even close. You are in a semi-minus reclined position, almost sitting up. Your head is high. Your neck is supported, but your back is at a distinct angle. It feels entirely unnatural, a posture for being awake, not for sleeping. It's awkward. It's rigid. It feels less like preparing for a long, deep rest and more like assuming a post, a waiting position. And as you try to find a sliver of comfort in this strange, upright arrangement, you can't help but wonder why anyone on earth would choose to sleep like this. The answer, you will soon discover, is that it wasn't a choice. It was the key to a completely different kind of night. You're settled now, propped up against your rampart of bolsters. Your chin is angled downwards towards your chest, and you can feel a slight, persistent tension in your neck and shoulders. Trying to sleep like this feels like a contradiction. Your body's instinct is to slump, to find a horizontal plane and let go. But this bed, this entire arrangement, is fighting that instinct with every packed fiber of wool and horsehair. You are being held in a state of readiness. Why? The question hangs in the dark, silent air. Why sleep sitting up? A host of popular theories, some more plausible than others, float through your mind. You might have heard that people slept this way out of a fear of death. A superstition that lying flat too closely resembled a corpse in a coffin, and that to do so would be to invite death in. It's a wonderfully spooky and gothic idea. But most historians now view it with a fair bit of skepticism, finding little direct evidence to support it. It's a bit too neat, a bit too dramatic for the mundane realities of daily life. Another common explanation you might recall has to do with health. For centuries, medical thought was dominated by the theory of the four humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. A healthy body was a balanced one. Lying flat, it was thought, could cause these humours to shift dangerously, allowing phlegm to flood the lungs or humours to rush to the head, leading to everything from a cough to a stroke. This is why, even in portraits, you often see the sick and elderly propped up in bed. It wasn't just for comfort. It was prescribed medical practice. This theory certainly holds more weight, as medical beliefs, no matter how strange they seem to us now, profoundly shaped people's habits. But as you sit there in the darkness, feeling the strain in your lower back, neither of these reasons feels completely sufficient. They don't seem to capture the full picture. The real reason, the one that scholars like A. Roger E. Kirk painstakingly uncovered through diaries, letters, and court records, is far more practical and far more profound. This posture wasn't really about avoiding death or balancing humours. It was about not sleeping too deeply. It was a physical posture designed to facilitate a psychological and social one, the practice of segmented sleep. You are not meant to sleep through the whole night. Nobody does. Nobody has for thousands of years. The expectation of a solid, 8-hour block of uninterrupted slumber is a strange, modern invention. Your ancestors had a different rhythm. They slept into major shifts, often called the first sleep and the second sleep, and in between them was a quiet, mysterious waking period, a gap in the night. Sleeping upright was the key to that gap. It prevented you from falling into the kind of deep, motionless slumber that makes waking up a shock, a struggle against gravity and inertia. By keeping your head elevated and your body partially engaged, you remained closer to the surface of consciousness. Waking up wasn't a jarring alarm bell. It was a gentle, natural drift into wakefulness. It was easier to rouse if you heard a strange noise, the cry of a baby, the shifting of livestock, the crackle of a fire about to go out. Vigilance was woven into the very fabric of your rest. Look around the room, through the deep shadows. You're likely not sleeping alone. In many households, Multiple family members, servants, or apprentices would share a single large bed. It was a communal activity. Privacy was a luxury few could afford or even conceive of. In this context, sleeping upright also made simple, practical sense. It took up less space, allowing more people to cram into a single bed for warmth. It also created a small, but significant, social boundary in an otherwise intimate space. Debate continues among historians about the universality of this practice. Was it just the wealthy who had elaborate bolstered beds? Or did the common farmer also prop himself up on his sack of straw? The evidence suggests it was widespread, a piece of common knowledge so deeply ingrained that few people thought to write it down. It was simply how one slept. Like breathing or eating, the surviving artifacts, the short beds, the high headboards, the sheer number of bolsters listed in household inventories all point to a world that rested at an incline. And so, you adjust your position one last time, trying to find the path of least resistance. You let your body yield to the strange, unaccommodating shape of the bed. You're not fighting it anymore. You are accepting its purpose. You are not here to pass out, to disconnect from the world for 8 hours. You are here to enter the first of 2 quiet harbors in the long, dark sea of the night. You close your eyes, and with the scent of straw and herbs in the air and the faint sound of another's breathing nearby, you allow yourself to drift. Your mind begins to loosen its grip on the day. The thoughts that were just moments ago churning the ache in your muscles from the field, the price of grain at the market, a promise you made to a neighbor start to lose their sharp edges. They soften, becoming blurry and distant, like shapes seen through a thick fog. This is the gentle descent. There is no desperate chase for sleep, no counting of sheep, no anxiety about the coming day. Sleep is not a commodity you are lacking. It is a tide that is coming in, and you are simply allowing it to lift you. The darkness behind your eyelids is absolute. It's a velvety, profound black that seems to absorb all sound and thought. The small noises of the house, the creak of a floorboard as someone settles, the whisper of the wind finding a crack in the wall fade into a single, low hum. Your body, still propped up in its strange, semi-minus vigilant posture, begins to feel incredibly heavy. It's as if gravity has grown stronger, pulling you down into the rustling straw of the mattress. Your limbs feel like lead, and the effort to move even a finger seems monumental. This is the first sleep. It was known by many names, depending on the time and place, but its character was universally understood. It was the deep dive, the heavy, dreamless plunge. This was the sleep of pure physical restoration. Your body, exhausted from a day of manual labor under the sun, craves this oblivion. It is a sinking, a letting go that feels bottomless. If you were to dream during this phase, the dreams would likely be fleeting and chaotic fragments of sensation, echoes of the day's work, the feeling of a tool in your hand, the image of a cloudy sky. Most people, in their letters and diaries from the period, rarely mention dreaming in their first sleep. It was considered a dark, quiet, empty space in the mind, a necessary void. The real business of dreaming, the vivid narratives and strange visitations, was reserved for the second sleep, much later in the night. You are not alone in this journey. Everyone in the house, and indeed, everyone in the village, is on the same schedule, governed by the same natural clock of the sun and the seasons. As the sun went down, the world began to shut down with it. People would retire not long after dusk, perhaps after a simple meal and a few quiet moments by the fire. By what you would call 8 or 9 o'clock, the entire community would be entering this first, deep slumber. The silence across the landscape would be almost absolute, broken only by the cry of a night bird or the distant howl of a dog. Medical texts from the era, from the learned physicians of the Renaissance back to the Greek Dr. Galen, all recognized this prophosic pattern. They advised that the best position for the first sleep was on the right side. This, they argued, allowed the stomach to cook the evening's meal most efficiently and kept the heart, the seat of passion, from becoming overheated. Whether ordinary people followed this advice to the letter is a subject of endless debate among scholars, but it shows how deeply this 2-part sleep was integrated into the era's understanding of a healthy life. It wasn't just a habit, it was medical doctrine. Your breathing is slow and deep now. The world has shrunk to the tiny universe of your own body. The scratchiness of the linen sheet, the pressure of the bolster against your back, the faint coolness of the air on your face. There is no clock ticking on a nightstand, no faint glow from a digital display. Time itself seems to have dissolved. How long will you be here, in this heavy state? An hour, 3, 2. The question doesn't occur to you. Your body knows the rhythm. It is a clock built of flesh and blood, wound by millennia of sunrises and sunsets. This first sleep is a powerful, anesthetic force. It's a brief, necessary death of consciousness. It wipes the slate clean. It's what gives you the strength to face the second half of the night, which will be a very different experience. And as you sink into the deepest, most silent part of this initial rest, you are entirely unaware that soon, without any external signal, without any sound or touch, you will simply and effortlessly wake up, not with a jolt or a sense of panic, but as gently as a leaf landing on still water. You are falling into the quiet, dark well of the first sleep, and soon you will be lifted out of it again. It happens without a cause. There is no noise from the street, no sudden change in temperature, no nightmare that jolts you awake. One moment, you are lost in the deep, featureless void of the first sleep, and the next, your consciousness gently surfaces, your eyes open. It is not a struggle. Your eyelids don't feel heavy or glued shut. They simply part, and you are looking into the same profound darkness you fell asleep in. You are awake, and the first thing you feel is not confusion, not anxiety, not the frustrated, modern thought of, "Why am I awake? I need to get back to sleep." Instead, a sense of deep, pervading calm washes over you. This is normal. This is expected. This is the natural midpoint of the night. You feel surprisingly refreshed. The bone-minus deep weariness from the day's labor has lifted. The aches in your muscles have softened. The first sleep has done its work. It was the sleep for the body. And now that the body is partially restored, it is time for the mind to have its turn. You lie still for a moment, simply listening. The house is a library of tiny sounds. The gentle, rhythmic breathing of your family members nearby. The soft sigh of the wooden beams of the house as they settle in the cool night air. Far in the distance, you hear the hoot of an owl, a sound so clear and sharp it seems to etch itself onto the silence. Your senses, unburdened by the constant noise and light of a modern world, are incredibly sharp. You are awake in the heart of the night, and the world feels both intimate and immense. This period, this quiet interlude between the two sleeps, has a name. It was often called the watch. The term itself is revealing. It implies a state of wakeful alertness, of quiet observation. This isn't a frustrating bout of insomnia. It's a recognized and valued part of the nightly schedule. For the next hour, perhaps 2, you will exist in a unique state of consciousness, a calm, meditative, and lucid wakefulness that was almost entirely unknown to the industrial and post-industrial world. You feel no pressure to immediately fall back asleep. In fact, the very concept would seem strange. This time is a gift. It is a quiet harbor in the middle of the night's long journey. Diaries and letters from the 16th to the 18th centuries are filled with fact descriptions of what people did during their watch. They didn't lie in bed fretting. They got up. They moved about. They used this time. The quality of thought during the watch was said to be different, free from the pressures and distractions of the day, and refreshed by the first sleep. The mind was believed to be clearer, more creative, more insightful. It was a time for reflection. You might mull over a problem that had been nagging you, and find that the solution presents itself with a surprising clarity in the quiet dark. You might revisit the events of the previous day, not with anxiety, but with a detached, philosophical calm. It was a time when the brain, in its own natural rhythm, processed, sorted, and filed away the day's experiences. How long did this waking period last? It varied. Some nights it might be a brief 30-minute stirring. Other times, it could stretch for 2 hours or more. There was no rigid schedule. People simply listened to their bodies. When the natural wave of drowsiness returned, they would go back to bed for their second sleep. One of the great historical debates is just how universal this was. While the evidence is overwhelming in Western Europe and colonial America, some scholars question if this was a truly global human phenomenon, or one more specific to certain cultures and climates. The current thinking, however, leans towards it being a deeply ingrained, biologically natural rhythm for our species, a rhythm we have only recently and artificially suppressed. You push yourself up slightly from your bolstered position. Your movements are slow, deliberate, quiet. There is no rush. There is nowhere you need to be. The darkness is a comforting blanket, not a source of fear. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, your bare feet finding the cool, hard-backed earth of the floor. You stand up, your body feeling loose and rested. The night is not over. In a way, it has just truly begun. You are now entering the lost, secret world of the midnight hour, a world not for sleeping, but for being. Your first steps are careful, a silent navigation through the geography of the room. A map you know by heart. Your destination is the hearth. As you draw closer, you can feel a faint, residual warmth radiating from the stones. The fire, the lifeblood of the household, has been sleeping, just as you have. It has been banked for the night, the embers carefully covered with a layer of ash to keep them alive but dormant. Conserving precious fuel, to let them die out completely would be a disaster. Forcing a trip to a neighbor in the morning to borrow a pan of live coals. You kneel on the stone hearth, the warmth seeping into your knees. Your first task at the watch is a ritual as old as human settlement. Waking the fire. You take a small, simple tool, perhaps a wooden stick or a small iron poker, and gently scrape away the grey blanket of ash. And there, beneath the surface, is a hidden constellation of deep, glowing red. The embers are still alive, breathing with a slow, steady heat. It's a reassuring sight. A tiny, domestic sun in the heart of the darkness. Gently, you begin to tend to them. You add a few small, dry twigs, placing them carefully over the hottest spots. You hold your breath, waiting. For a moment, nothing happens. The embers just glow, stubborn and quiet. Then, a tiny, almost invisible wisp of smoke curls up from one of the twigs. You lean in closer, your face just inches from the hearth. Then you blow. Not a hard, forceful gust, but a long, slow, steady breath, coaxing the heat to catch. A small, hesitant tongue of yellow flame flickers into existence, nicks at a twig, and then vanishes. You blow again, and this time, it holds. A tiny flame, no bigger than your thumb, begins to dance. It grows, finding another twig, then another. The fire is waking up. The shadows in the room, which had been still and deep, begin to move again, retreating from the growing circle of light. The soft crackle of the kindling is the only sound in the house. Comforting, domestic music. Once the kindling has caught, you add a larger piece of wood, a split log, carefully dried and saved for this exact moment. It must be just the right size, not so large that it burns too quickly, but not so small that it offers little warmth or light. Fuel is a constant concern. The wood you burn tonight was likely gathered weeks or months ago, a product of hard labor felling, chopping, hauling, unstacking. Every log represents an investment of time and energy. You don't burn it carelessly. The new log catches, and a raw, steady light fills the room. It's not a bright light. It's a soft, golden glow that doesn't fully penetrate the corners of the room but pushes the deepest darkness back. The faces of your sleeping family are now visible, calm and peaceful in the flickering light. The light transforms the space from a dark, uncertain void into a cozy, familiar haven. You can see the texture of the wooden table, the weave of the cloth on the loom, the simple pottery on its shelf. The world has been returned to you. This act of tending the fire was more than a simple chore. It was a central part of the watch. It provided the light needed for any other activity. It provided the warmth that staved off the deep, damp chill of the night, and it was symbolic. It was the act of keeping the heart of the home beating through the long, dark hours. There's a fascinating ongoing debate among anthropologists and historians about the gendered nature of this task. Was it always the woman of the house who tended the night fire, or did men share the responsibility? The evidence is varied and often contradictory, suggesting it was likely a fluid role, dictated more by household structure and individual habit than by rigid social rules. You sit back on your heels, the warmth of the fire on your face and hands. The flames leap and sway. A silent, mesmerizing dance. You brought the home back to life. You've created a small, safe pocket of warmth and light in the middle of a vast, sleeping world. This simple, primal act grounds you. It connects you to a chain of human experience stretching back into the mists of time. For now, this small circle of light is your entire universe, and in its gentle glow, the quiet activities of the watch can now begin. The soft crackling of the resurrected fire is no longer the only sound in the house. As your eyes adjust to the renewed, flickering light, your ears pick up other, subtler stirrings. From the large bed in the corner, there's a soft rustle of straw, a gentle sigh. Someone else is waking up. It's not a sudden, startled movement. It's a slow, languid stretch. The sound of a body easing its way out of the first sleep. Just as you did. You see a silhouette sit up. An older woman. Perhaps your mother or an aunt. Her hair covered in a simple cap. Her face illuminated by the soft glow of the flames. She doesn't speak. She simply nods at you. A silent acknowledgement that the watch has begun for her as well. This shared, silent greeting is a ritual in itself. It's a confirmation that the rhythm of the night is proceeding as it should. She swings her legs out of the bed and, wrapping a thick woolen shawl around her shoulders, pants quietly over to join you by the hearth. The two of you sit there for a moment in a comfortable, companionable silence, simply watching the flames. There is no need to fill the quiet with chatter, in a world with so little privacy. Silence between people was not awkward. It was a form of intimacy, a shared space of rest. Then, from another part of the room, perhaps from a smaller trundle bed or a simple pallet on the floor, you hear another sound. A cough, quickly muffled. A younger brother or a farmhand, also rising from his first slumber. He sits up, rubs his eyes, and after a moment, gets to his feet. He doesn't come to the fire. Instead, he feels his way to the door, unlatches it with a familiar wooden clatter, and slips outside into the pitch-minus black yard. You know, without needing to be told, that he is going to check on the animals, to make sure the cow is settled, the chickens are secure in their coop, that the night has brought no unwelcome predators. It's a small but necessary part of the nightly routine. The house, which just a short while ago was a vessel of deep, collective sleep, is now a place of quiet, purposeful movement. It's a bit like a ship in the middle of a long ocean voyage, where the crew stirs for the mid-minus watch, each member attending to their specific, familiar duties. The concept of a household where everyone is on a different schedule, one person a night owl, another an early bird, would be utterly alien. The entire household was a single organism, synchronized to the same primal, solar clock. Historians poring over household account books and architectural plans have found fascinating clues about this shared nightlife. The very design of older houses, with their central living spaces and lack of private corridors, facilitated this communal waking. There were no separate bedrooms to seal oneself off in. Life was lived in common, and that included the middle of the night. A niche historical debate even exists around the placement of chamber pots. with some scholars arguing that their locations suggest a clear expectation of regular nighttime use by a household that was not fully asleep. A soft whimper comes from a cradle set close to the fire for warmth. A baby is stirring. Before the whimper can escalate into a full blown cry that would wake the deeper sleepers, the woman beside you is already moving. She lifts the baby with a practiced, gentle motion, settles into a low stool, and begins to nurse. The baby's cries subside into soft, contented gurgles. The firelight plays on their faces. A timeless portrait of nocturnal care. This was a natural time for feeding infants, for changing a wet, swaddling cloth, for offering the simple comfort of a mother's presence. You look around this small, softly lit scene. A woman nursing a baby, a young man tending to the livestock, you guarding the fire. The house is not asleep. It is in a state of quiet, functional wake of signals. It is not the chaotic, bright, noisy on of the daytime, nor is it the silent, still off of deep sleep. It is something in between, a third state of being, a gentle, humming equilibrium. You are all awake, together, in the deep, dull cold of the night, and it is the most normal thing in the world. The woman nursing the baby begins to speak. Her voice is low, a soft murmur that doesn't carry far beyond the immediate circle of firelight. It's a tone reserved for this specific time, a duo or veil voice, as the French would later call it, perfectly suited to the sleepy-wakeful state between sleeps. She asks a simple question, not about the worries of tomorrow, not about the labor of yesterday. She asks about a dream she just had. She recounts a strange, fragmented narrative: a talking bird, a field of blue flowers, a lost shoe. She speaks of it not as a silly fantasy, but as a subject worthy of serious, quiet consideration. You listen, adding a thought here, a question there. In this peaceful, unhurried hour, dreams are not dismissed. They are unpacked, examined, and discussed. They were widely considered to be more than just random firings of a resting brain. They could be portents, messages from the divine, or reflections of the body's humoral balance. A frightening dream might be a warning of an impending illness. A pleasant one could be a sign of good fortune to come. The analysis of dreams was a common and important activity during the watch. Your younger brother slips back inside, the door closing with a soft thud behind him. He brings a gust of cold, crisp night air with him, scented with damp earth and animals. He reports that all is well in the yard, his voice also hushed. He joins the circle by the fire, taking a moment to warm his hands. The conversation about the dream pauses, and he might share a small piece of information. He heard the distant bark of a fox, or the wind seems to be shifting, suggesting a change in the weather. These are the quiet, essential communications of a life lived in close connection with the natural world. This is the social aspect of the watch. In the daylight hours, conversation was often functional, shouted over the noise of work or hurried during a brief meal. But here, in the shared group, a different kind of communication could happen. The distractions were gone. The social masks of the day could be set aside. People spoke more freely, more intimately. It was a time for confessions, for the sharing of secrets, for mending small arguments. Neighbors, awake in their own homes, might even visit each other during this time, especially in the close quarters of a village. A diary from the 17th century might casually mention a neighbor dropping by at 1 in the morning for a pipe and a chat. You find yourself sharing a worry that has been sitting on your chest, something you hadn't found the words for during the busy day. Speaking it aloud into the quiet darkness seems to rob it of its power. The advice you receive in return is calm, measured, spoken in that same hushed, hypnotic tone. The fire crackles, a third voice in the conversation. Scholars of social history treasure the letters and court records that give us glimpses into these nocturnal conversations. They reveal a level of intimacy and emotional depth that daytime records often lack. Adulterous affairs were planned, small rebellions were plotted, and deep friendships were forged in the hours between the first and second sleep. The talk might then drift to storytelling. This was a prime time for it. The old tales, the local legends, the ghost stories that made the shadows dance a little more menacingly. With the wind howling outside and the world dark and still, the power of a well-told story was immense. It was entertainment, history lesson, and moral instruction all rolled into one. The shared experience of listening to a story in the near-darkness strengthened the bonds of the family or the household. It was a primary form of cultural transmission, and the watch was its natural theater. It's important to remember that this wasn't necessarily a happy, idyllic time for everyone. For some, this forced intimacy in the dead of night could be oppressive. There are historical accounts, though harder to find, that hint at the tensions and conflicts that could also arise in this quiet hour. A sharp word spoken in the dark could sting more than one shouted in the daylight. Nonetheless, the overwhelming impression left by the historical record is that this was a cherished, valuable time for connection. As you sit there, sharing words in the warm bubble of the firelight, you feel a sense of belonging that is profound. You are not just a collection of individuals sharing a roof. You are a single, breathing unit, awake together in the quiet heart of the night. This shared experience, this nightly ritual of waking and talking, is as crucial to the structure of your family as the wooden beams that hold up the ceiling above you. The conversation eventually fades, and you fall back into a comfortable, shared silence, each lost in your own thoughts, yet still deeply connected by the darkness and the fire. The quiet conversation ebbs away, leaving behind a comfortable silence. The atmosphere in the room begins to shift. The communal, social energy gently recedes, replaced by something more internal, more personal. Your gaze might drift from the faces of your family to the mesmerizing dance of the flames. Your thoughts turn inward. This, for many, was the most sacred part of the watch. It was the time for the soul. In a world steeped in religious faith, the middle of the night was not considered empty time. It was holy time. It was seen as a tear in the fabric of the ordinary world, a moment when the veil between the earthly and the divine was at its thinnest. Monastic communities had long structured their lives around this idea, with strict schedules of prayers and vigils, like matins and lauds, held in the hours after midnight. They believed that to be awake and praying when the rest of the world was asleep was a uniquely powerful form of devotion. While you were not a monk in a cloister, this monastic ideal filtered down into the lives of ordinary people. Religious guides and prayer books from the period often included special prayers intended specifically for this midnight waking period. They weren't mandatory, but they were strongly encouraged. Their logic was simple and persuasive. The day was for labor, for the needs of the body and the demands of the world. The night, this quiet, still part of the night, was for God. You might find yourself reciting a simple, memorized prayer, your lips moving without a sound. The words feel different here. In the deep silence, they carry more weight, free from the distractions of the day. Your mind is more receptive, more focused. It is a perfect moment for spiritual housekeeping, for a quiet examination of your conscience, for reflecting on your actions and failings of the day past, for feeling a sense of gratitude for the simple fact of being alive and warmed by a fire. This nocturnal spirituality wasn't just about formal prayer. It was also a time for contemplation, for pondering the great, timeless questions. The vast, silent darkness outside the shuttered windows served as a powerful reminder of the sheer scale of creation and your own small place within it. Staring into the shifting embers of the fire, you might feel a connection to all the generations before you who had done the same, a sense of your own life as a single, brief flicker in a great, long-minded burning fire. There's a fascinating, and still debated, link between this segmented sleep and the intense spiritual fervor of certain historical periods, like the Protestant Reformation. Some historians argue that the watch provided a private, personal space for developing a direct relationship with the divine, away from the public rituals of the church. Martin Luther himself, the catalyst of the Reformation, was known to have a sleep pattern that maps perfectly onto this model, often using the quiet of the night for his most intense periods of theological work and prayer. The idea that this lost rhythm of sleep may have helped shape the course of Western religious history is a powerful one. But this spiritual hour wasn't limited to Christian devotion. The belief that the middle of the night held a special power is ancient and cross-minus cultural. It was a time when spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, were thought to roam the earth. It was a time for folk magic, for the casting of simple spells or the preparation of herbal remedies, which were believed to be more potent when gathered or mixed under the influence of the moon and stars, even if they couldn't be seen. You feel a profound sense of peace settle over you. It's a quiet that seems to emanate from the very center of your being. In this moment, you are not just a laborer, a son, a brother, you are a soul, having a quiet audience with the universe. The fire provides the warmth, the darkness provides the privacy, and the unique, refreshed state of your mind provides the clarity. The watch is not just a break between two sleeps. It is a time for the recalibration of your spiritual compass. It is a silent, personal pilgrimage that you take every single night. And as you sit there, lost in this peaceful contemplation, you understand why your ancestors didn't dread this waking. They treasured it. While you are lost in quiet contemplation by the fire, you imagine a different scene unfolding in another house, perhaps in a bustling town miles away. There, in a room lined with books, a scholar is experiencing the watch, not as a time for prayer, but as a golden opportunity. For him, this hour is the ultimate luxury, a block of time with perfect, uninterrupted silence. Imagine this scholar. He has also risen from his first sleep, feeling that same calm alertness. But instead of just tending the fire for warmth, he uses a taper to light a precious candle. The soft glow of the tallow candle pushes back the shadows from his desk, illuminating a stack of books and a blank sheet of parchment. The inkwell is open, the quill pen freshly trimmed. The silence in his study is absolute. There are no sounds from the street, no cries of vendors, no hammering from a nearby workshop. The entire world is asleep, leaving him alone with his thoughts. This was the secret weapon of intellectuals, writers, and thinkers for centuries. The watch was their prime working time. The mind, refreshed from the first sleep and free from the anxieties of the day, was in a perfect state for deep, focused work. It was a time of heightened creativity and clarity. Many of the great works of pre-industrial literature, philosophy, and science were likely penned in the quiet solitude of this midnight hour. The American writer, Benjamin Franklin, famously a proponent of self-improvement, hinted at this pattern in his autobiography, structuring his day with periods of reflection early in the morning, a time that feels very much like the tail end of a segmented sleep cycle. In England, the poet Alexander Pope was known to wake in the night to write down verses that came to him, keeping a servant on hand to provide him with paper. It wasn't that they were insomniacs. They were simply using a natural waking period that their society understood and accommodated. You picture the scholar at his desk. He dips his quill into the ink pot and begins to write. The only sound is the delicate, rhythmic scratch of the nib on the parchment. He is not fighting to concentrate. The words flow easily. An argument that seemed tangled and complex during the day now unfolds with a simple, elegant logic. He might be composing a letter to a colleague, drafting a political pamphlet, or meticulously translating a Greek text. The candle burns down, a slow, steady measure of this precious, productive time. One of the weirder, more niche historical debates centers on the economics of this. Scholars argue about the candle calculus, how a scholar would weigh the cost of a candle's significant expense against the value of the intellectual work they could accomplish during the watch. This wasn't just for famous intellectuals. Anyone with a need for quiet concentration measured this time. A merchant might use the watch to go over his ledgers and accounts. His mind sharpened, his calculations clear. A woman might work on a piece of intricate embroidery or lace making, a task that required intense focus and good light, which the single, unwavering flame of a candle could provide better than the flickering fire. A clergyman would work on his sermon for the coming Sunday, seeking divine inspiration in the holy quiet. The watch was a hidden pocket of productivity in a world that was otherwise governed by the sun. It was a way to steal a few extra hours, to get ahead. But it didn't feel like a theft. It wasn't the stressful, caffeine minus fueled all minus nighter of the modern era. It was a calm, peaceful, and deeply satisfying period of work. The body was rested, the mind was alert, and the world was silent. It was the perfect equation for intellectual labor. Back in your own humble home, you don't have books or ledgers, but you can feel a shadow of that same mental clarity. Your thoughts are orderly, unhurried. You can think through a problem with a patience that the frantic pace of the day doesn't allow. You are solving a different kind of puzzle: how to best rotate the crops in the small field, how to fix a broken fence post, where to find the best price for your surplus eggs. The principle is the same. The watch is a gift of clarity, a time when the mind, in its most natural state, can do its best work, and as you sit by the fire, your own simple plans for the coming day begin to take shape, drawn with invisible ink in the quiet theater of your mind. The firelight casts a warm, gentle glow, and your mind, now clear and calm, begins to drift back. It wanders to the edge of the first sleep, to the hazy, forgotten shores of the dreams you just had. You are not trying to force the memory. You are simply creating a quiet space and inviting it to surface, and slowly, like a shy creature emerging from the woods, a fragment appears. You remember the feeling of flying, not with wings, but simply floating, effortlessly, over a landscape that was familiar yet strangely altered. The colors were more vivid, the shapes of the hills softer. You remember a conversation with someone you haven't seen in years. Their voice perfectly clear, the words they spoke nonsensical yet seeming to hold some profound meaning at the time. This is another vital function of the watch: dream analysis. In a world before psychology, dreams were not seen as the brain's nightly clean-up crew, sorting and filing memories. They were active, meaningful experiences, and the period right after the first sleep was considered the absolute best time to catch and interpret them before they dissolved in the morning light. A whole genre of popular books, called dream books, offered encyclopedic lists of dream symbols and their supposed meanings. To dream of a key meant you would discover a secret. To dream of clear water signified joy, muddy water, sorrow. You turn the fragments of your dream over in your mind, like a jeweler examining a strange gemstone. What did the flying mean? The dream books might tell you it signifies ambition or a desire for freedom. What about the nonsensical conversation? Perhaps it was a coded message, a riddle your sleeping mind was presenting to your waking self. This wasn't a frivolous pastime. People made real world decisions based on these interpretations. A farmer might delay planting his crops if he had a dream he interpreted as a bad omen. A young woman might reconsider a suitor after a troubling dream about him. The process is slow, meditative. You are not just remembering the dream. You are experiencing its emotional texture. The feeling of joy and liberation you had while flying. The sense of warmth and nostalgia from the conversation. The watch provides the perfect mental state for this work. You are close enough to the dream state to record vividly, yet lucid enough to analyze it with a degree of detachment. There is a fascinating and ongoing scholarly debate about the nature of these pre-industrial dreams. Some historians, like the renowned Carlo Ginzburg, have analyzed Inquisition records where people were tried for heresy based on their dreams. These records provide a rare, if distorted, window into the dream worlds of ordinary people. They suggest that dreams were often populated by religious figures, saints, and demons, and were experienced with an intensity that made them feel utterly real. The line between the dream world and the waking world was far more porous than it is for you now. You might even share your dream with the others who are awake by the fire. "I dreamt I was flying," you might say. This would not be met with a quizzical look, but with genuine interest. A quiet discussion would begin. Your mother might offer an interpretation based on folklore. Your brother might connect it to an event from the previous day. The dream becomes a shared text, a story to be collectively understood. It's a form of intimacy, revealing the private theater of your mind to those you trust. This practice reveals a different understanding of consciousness itself. Your ancestors did not necessarily see a hard minus and minus fast line between the real world of waking life and the unreal world of dreams. They were two different but equally valid realms of experience. And the watch was the bridge that allowed for easy travel between them. It was the customs office of the mind, where the strange baggage of the night could be inspected and declared. As you sit there, the details of your dream begin to fade, even with your focused attention. It is a delicate, slippery thing, but the feeling it left behind, that sense of lightness and freedom, remains. You may not have unlocked a great secret or predicted the future, but you have engaged in a deep, introspective process. You have listened to a quieter, stranger part of yourself, and this act of listening, of taking your inner world seriously, leaves you with a sense of wholeness and peace as you continue your quiet vigil in the heart of the night. As you sit by the fire, feeling the pleasant, refreshed calm of the midnight watch, a thought may cross your mind about your health. In your modern world, waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to immediately fall back asleep is a source of anxiety, a problem to be solved, a condition often labeled insomnia. You might reach for a pill, a herbal tea, or a meditation app. But in this world, that thought would be absurd. If you were to visit a physician of this hour and complain, "Doctor, I keep waking up around midnight for an hour or two," he would likely look at you with deep confusion. He might check your pulse, examine your tongue, and then, after some thoughtful stroking of his beard, he would pronounce his diagnosis. "My dear friend, you are perfectly healthy." Waking in the night was not a symptom of a disorder. It was the sign of a well-functioning, properly regulated body. Medical advice of the time didn't just tolerate segmented sleep. It actively prescribed it. Influential medical treatises, from the ancient Greeks right up through the 17th and 18th centuries, were built around this biphasic model. They saw the night as a period of crucial physiological processes, a kind of internal factory that worked in distinct shifts. The first sleep, they argued, was for digestion. It was the concoction phase. Your body, lying on its right side as they advised, was like a pot gently simmering over the low heat of your innate vitality. This was the time to process the food from your evening meal, transforming it into useful nourishment. Waking up after this first sleep was a signal that this primary, heavy work was complete. The watch, then, was seen as a time for a different set of bodily functions. Physicians believed this was the ideal time for the body to produce, seed the vital essence for procreation. It was also a time for the gentle distribution of humors that had been concocted during the first sleep. The mind, being clearer, was also considered to be in its best state. One famous 16th-century French doctor, Laurent Gilbert, wrote extensively on this, explicitly stating that students, scholars, and anyone who worked with their mind would benefit most by using this specific interval for their studies. He saw waking in the night not as a waste of rest, but as the most productive and healthy use of one's time. Medical texts often contain bizarre and specific prescriptions related to this pattern. For instance, certain herbal remedies or potions were to be taken not before bed, but specifically during this midnight waking period. The logic was that with the primary digestion complete, the body would be more receptive to the subtle effects of the medicine. The idea of a time-release capsule is not so modern after all. Your ancestors just had a built-in biological version. Of course, there is a lively, undawned debate among medical historians about how much of this formal medical theory actually influenced the daily habits of the common person. Did the average farmer really think about concocting his humors as he drifted off to sleep? Probably not in those exact terms. But these medical ideas were not just confined to dusty Latin texts. They filtered down through sermons, almanacs, and folk wisdom, reinforcing a cultural consensus that sleeping in 2 shifts was the natural and healthy way to live. The doctor's advice and the body's natural inclination were in perfect harmony. The real sleep disorder in their eyes would have been the inability to wake up at all, to sleep through the entire night in a single, heavy block. This might have been seen as a sign of sluggishness, of an imbalance of phlegmatic humors, or even of a kind of gluttonous laziness. To be a good sleeper meant to be a good segmented sleeper, one who woke naturally and used the watch productively. So as you sit here in the quiet dark, you can release a phantom anxiety you didn't even know you had. Your wake-up snooze is not a bug, it's a feature. Your body is not broken. It is behaving exactly as it was designed to. You are not an insomniac. You are simply a healthy, normal human being, living in accordance with a rhythm that your species has followed for time immemorial. The feeling is one of deep reassurance, a sense of being perfectly in tune with your own biology. The deep, internal work of prayer, contemplation, or dream analysis begins to feel complete. A quiet, low-energy restlessness takes its place. This isn't a time for heavy labor, but the watch was rarely a period of pure idleness. It was often filled with small, simple, and almost silent chores that were perfectly suited to the hour. You look around the dimly lit room. Your eyes fall upon a small pile of mending in a basket by the hearth. A tear in a linen shirt, a hole in a woolen stocking. During the day, there is rarely time for such meticulous, stationary work. But now, in the focused calm of the watch, it feels like a pleasant, meditative task. You pick up a stocking, thread a needle by the firelight, a feat that requires both good eyes and a steady hand, and begin to stitch. The repetitive motion of the needle weaving in and out of the wall is soothing, hypnotic. Your mind is free to wander as your hands perform the familiar, practiced task. This was the genius of the watch. It absorbed the small but necessary tasks that otherwise cluttered the edges of a busy day. These weren't chores that required strength or bright sunlight. They were the quiet, domestic arts. You might see the woman who was nursing her baby now take up a spindle, her hands deftly spinning raw wool into thread in the flickering light. The soft whir of the spindle would be a gentle, rhythmic addition to the quiet of the room. Another person might be shelling peas for the next day's meal. The gentle click of the peas dropping into a wooden bowl is often satisfying sound. Outside the home, the chores were just as quiet and specific. Your brother, having already checked the animals, might now be in the small attached workshop, sharpening a blade on a whetstone. The soft, rhythmic shing of steel on stone is a sound that carries in the night, a signal to any other wakeful soul that another household is also at its nightly work. He might be mending a piece of leather harness, his hands moving with a slow, deliberate efficiency. One of the more peculiar, undoubtedly charming, uses of this time was for brewing certain types of beer and ale. According to old recipes and household manuals, were best brewed in the cool, stable temperatures of the night. The process required careful watching, and the quiet, interruption-3 hours of the watch were perfect for it. The image of a household, awake in the dead of night, gathered around a steaming mash tun, is a wonderfully strange and specific glimpse into this lost world. Historians still argue about how widespread this nocturnal brewing was, with some suggesting it was a specialist activity, while others believe it was a common household chore in certain regions. Even personal grooming often took place during this interval. In an age before convenient mirrors and good lighting, tasks like combing and braiding long hair, or a man trimming his beard, could be done by feeling with the focused light of the fire. It was a moment of personal care and attention that the rush of the morning often didn't permit. All these tasks had a common character. They were quiet, they could be done in low light, and they were easily interruptible. If you suddenly felt the wave of drowsiness returning, you could simply put down your mending, bank the fire again, and return to bed. There was no deadline, no pressure to finish. The watch was a flexible container, a bonus period of time that could be filled as needed. It was a testament to human efficiency and adaptability, a way of wringing every last drop of productivity from the day, or in this case, the night, without adding stress. You finish your mending. The hole in the stocking is gone, replaced by a neat, a slightly uneven patch of stitches. It's a small accomplishment, but deeply satisfying. You have redeemed this piece of clothing, extended its life, saved a small amount of money in future labor, and you have done it in a time that your modern self would have considered wasted. A frustrating period of sleepsonce. Here, it has been transformed into a moment of quiet purpose and gentle productivity. You set aside the mended stocking and simply sit, letting the quiet of the house settle around you once more. The small, purposeful sounds of domestic chores have faded away, and you are left in the deep, profound silence of the mid-minus watch. But it isn't truly silent. As you focus your hearing, you begin to realize that the night has a voice of its own, a subtle and complex language that is normally drowned out by the noise of the day. Your ears, now fully attuned to the darkness, become incredibly sensitive. You can hear the tiny, frantic scratching of a mouse behind the wattle and daub of the wall. A sound that would be utterly inaudible during the daytime is now a distinct and clear piece of information. You can hear the soft, rhythmic chewing of the cow in her stall, a reassuring, contented sound that tells you all is well with your most valuable animal. Your attention drifts to the house itself. It is not a static, inert object. It is alive. You can hear the old timbers of the frame groaning softly as they contract in the cold. It's a sound like a deep, slow sigh, as if the house is breathing. The thatched roof above you rustles, and you can't be sure if it's the wind or if some small creature is making its nest there. The house is a living organism, and you are inside its belly, listening to its secret nocturnal life. This heightened sense of hearing was a critical survival tool. Your ancestors, living in structures that were far from secure, used their ears as their primary alarm system. Every creak, every rustle, every snap of a twig outside was registered, identified, and assessed. Was that the sound of the wind, a predator, or a human intruder? The watch was a period of natural vigilance, and your hearing was the sentinel on duty. Historians studying court records from the period are often struck by how frequently testimony in criminal cases hinges on what someone heard in the night. It was a time when people were awake and listening, their senses sharp. You turn your attention to the sounds coming from beyond the walls. The wind is the main orchestra of the night. It whispers through the cracks in the shutters, creates a low, mournful moan as it passes over the chimney, and a louder, rushing roar as it moves through the trees in the nearby woods. You can read the wind, gauge its strength and direction, and from that, make a decent guess about the coming day's weather. A strong, steady wind from the west might mean rain by morning. Then there are the animals. They're distant. Lonely Howler wolf was a common sound in many parts of the world, a chilling but familiar part of the night soundscape. You might hear the sharp, barking cry of a fox, or the strange, almost human minus-like screech of a barn owl. These were not just random noises. They were the sounds of a whole other world that came to life only after the sun went down. A world of hunters and hunted that moved in the darkness just beyond your door. The absolute silence of the modern, insulated bedroom has deafened you to this vibrant, nocturnal ecosystem. The world without artificial light was also a world without artificial noise. There was no hum of a refrigerator, no drone of a distant highway, no faint electronic whine from a charging device. The baseline of sound was near zero. This is a level of quiet that is almost impossible to experience now. A silence so deep it feels like a physical presence. Some acoustical historians and anthropologists have even argued that this profound quiet had a psychological effect, encouraging a more introspective and meditative state of mind. It's a difficult theory to prove, but, as you sit there, feeling the immense stillness, it makes perfect sense. You close your eyes and just listen. You are a passive receiver, a listening post in the center of the night. You can distinguish the different textures of the silence, the close, warm silence inside the house, and the vast, cold, open silence of the world outside. You are learning the language of the night, a language of subtlety and nuance. It is a language of survival, of weather prediction, of connection to the natural world. It is a language your modern self has forgotten how to speak, or even to hear. And in this moment, listening, you feel a part of that ancient world awaken within you. As the watch continues, the atmosphere in the small house can shift once more. The quiet chores are done, the prayers have been said, and a different kind of energy might begin to surface, one of unique privacy and intimacy. For a married couple, this time between the two sleeps was often considered the most precious and opportune moment for physical closeness. In the shared bed, a husband and wife might find themselves awake, the rest of the household stirring quietly or already drifting back towards sleep. The fire has burned low again, casting only the faintest, softest glow. The darkness provides a blanket of privacy that was simply unavailable during the crowded, communal daylight hours. This wasn't just a matter of convenience. It was a widely held belief, supported by both medical and moral authorities of the time. Physicians, with their intricate understanding of the body's rhythms, had very specific ideas about this. They argued that the best time for marital relations was not at the end of the day, when the body was exhausted and burdened with a full stomach. That was considered unhealthy, even dangerous, potentially leading to the conception of sickly children. The ideal moment, they prescribed, was after the first sleep. The reasoning was multifaceted. First, the heavy work of digestion was complete, leaving the body free for other exertions. Both partners were refreshed from their initial rest, possessing more energy and vitality than they had at bedtime. The mind was calm and the spirit was tranquil, which was thought to be more conducive to a loving and fruitful union. One 16th century French physician went so far as to call it the sweetest and most natural time, when couples could do it better and find more enjoyment. It's a wonderfully frank piece of medical advice, a reminder that our ancestors were not as prudish as we sometimes imagine them to be. This belief was so widespread that it became a cultural trope. It appears in literature, in personal diaries, and even in jokes from the period. Chaucer, in one of his Canterbury Tales, makes a sly reference to a character enjoying this post-first sleep congress. A 17th century clergyman's diary might contain a coded entry that scholars now recognize as a reference to the specific nocturnal activity. The evidence is clear. This was not a secret or shameful practice, but a normal, healthy, and even recommended part of married life. Of course, the reality of life in a crowded, one-room house adds a layer of complexity. How is true intimacy possible with children, servants, or other family members sleeping just a few feet away? Historians who specialize in the history of privacy continue to debate this. The answer likely lies in a different understanding of privacy itself. It was not about being completely unseen or unheard, which was an impossible standard. Instead, it was about discretion, the darkness, the low murmur of the wind, the heavy breathing of other sleepers. All of these would have provided a sufficient curtain of concealment for a couple to feel they were in their own private world. Furthermore, the communal sleeping arrangement might have, paradoxically, enforced this schedule. With everyone in the household on the same sleep cycle, a couple could be reasonably sure that the others were either awake and occupied with their own quiet tasks, or had already entered their second, deeper sleep. This practice also sheds light on the high birth rates of the pre-industrial era. While there are many complex factors involved, some historians suggest that this prophylactic sleep pattern, which provided a regular, low-stress, and physiologically optimal time for conception, may have played a small but significant role. It was a rhythm of life that was fundamentally in sync with the rhythms of procreation. You lie back down on the rustling straw mattress, the warmth of the fire a distant comfort. You feel the presence of your spouse beside you in the dark. The shared silence is not empty, but filled with a deep, unspoken understanding, in this quiet, protected bubble of time, away from the endless demands of the fall. The children and the community, a unique and profound connection is possible. It is a moment of pure intimacy, a gift of the night, stolen from the jaws of sleep. The feeling of peace and intimacy is a warm, comforting blanket, yet, underneath it, a thin, persistent thread of tension remains. The watch is a time of calm, but it is also, quite literally, a watch, a vigil. You are awake for a reason, and it is not just for prayer and quiet chores. You are awake because the night is dangerous, and a sleeping household is a vulnerable one. You listen again to the sounds outside, the wind in the trees, the cry of an owl, but you are listening for other sounds, too. The snap of a twig that is too sharp, too close, the low growl of a dog that is not your own, the faint, metallic clink of something that has no business being out there in the dark. Your state of relaxed wakefulness is also a state of readiness. The most immediate threat came from the fire on your own hearth. While it was the source of life and comfort, it was also a constant danger, a log shifting unexpectedly, a spark landing on the dry straw of the floor or the thatched roof. It could take only moments for a catastrophic fire to start. Houses were built of wood, straw, and pitch. They were tinder boxes. Waking in the night to check on the fire wasn't just about keeping it going. It was about keeping it under control. The role of the fire tender was also that of the fire warden. Many historical accounts of house fires begin with the phrase, "while the family was asleep," a stark reminder of what could happen when the vigil was not kept. Then there were the dangers from outside. In the countryside, predators were a real and constant threat to livestock. A wolf, a fox, or a bear could easily carry off a chicken, a lamb, or even a calf, which could be a devastating economic loss for a family living on the edge of subsistence. Part of the watch was being an auditory sentinel, listening for any sounds of distress from the barn or the coop. The young man who went out to check the animals was not just performing a routine task, he was on patrol. And of course, there were human threats. In an era before organized police forces and reliable locks, the night could provide cover for thieves, vagrants, and those with ill intent. While towns and cities had their own night watchmen often portrayed as comically inept, but a real presence nonetheless. A rural homestead was on its own. The simple wooden bar across the door and the shutters on the windows were the only lines of defense. Being awake in the house was the best deterrent. The faint glow of a fire, the soft sounds of movement within, would be enough to signal to any would-be intruder that this was not an easy target. The psychology of this is fascinating. Your ancestors lived with a baseline level of anxiety about the night that you have almost completely lost. For you, the night is a time for rest and an absence of threat. For them, it was a time of heightened risk. Sleep itself was an act of faith, a temporary surrender of one's defenses. The watch, then, was a compromise. It was a way to get necessary rest without ever fully disarming. Some historians who study the history of emotions argue that this constant, low-level vigilance shaped the pre-industrial psyche, creating a mindset that was inherently more cautious and, perhaps, more superstitious about the unseen dangers of the dark. The debate over whether this was a source of constant, draining anxiety or simply an accepted, normal part of life is still very much active. You get up from the bed and walk to one of the shuttered windows. You don't open it, but you press your ear against the cool wood. You are listening, feeling the vibrations of the night through the very structure of the house. You are a part of the home's immune system, a white blood cell on patrol. The upright sleeping posture now makes even more sense. It wasn't just about waking up gently. It was about being able to go from a state of rest to a state of full, alert readiness in a matter of seconds. You were not sleeping. You were waiting. This underlying tension doesn't necessarily create fear. It is too familiar for that. It is simply a part of the texture of the night. It is the bass note in the quiet symphony of the watch. It is a reminder that the peace you are experiencing is not a given. It is a small, warm circle you have created, and must actively defend against the vast, cold, and potentially hostile darkness that surrounds you. As you stand by the shuttered window, listening, you become aware of something new. It's faint, carried on the wind from a distance. Laughter. It's a brief, boisterous burst, quickly swallowed by the night. A moment later, you hear the muffled sound of singing, a tune you don't quite recognize, rising and falling with the gusts of wind. You realize with a jolt that you're not the only one awake, and not everyone is spending their watch in quiet contemplation. While your household is a small island of peaceful, domestic activity, the night outside holds other forms of wakefulness. Just down the lane, in the village tavern, the lights are still burning. The tavern keeper has likely been up for hours, serving the last of his patrons, travelers, late-9 curry users, or local men with a thirst that the day couldn't quench. The sounds you hear are drifting from there, a pocket of noise and convivialia in the sleeping landscape. For some, the watch was not a time for prayer, but for another pint of ale. You can imagine the scene inside. A roaring fire, much larger than your own, casting a warm, smoky haze over the room. The air is thick with the smell of spilled beer, tobacco smoke, and unwashed bodies. Men are sitting around a rough-minded hewn table. Their faces flushed, their voices loud. They might be gambling, playing cards or dice. The clatter of their game a sharp counterpoint to the night's silence. They are telling stories, but these are not the gentle folk tales shared by your hearth. These are loud, bawdy jokes and exaggerated tales of personal prowess. This was the other side of the night. The watch provided an opportunity not just for piety and productivity, but for revelry and transgression. It was a time when the normal social rules of the day could be relaxed or even broken, away from the watchful eyes of employers, spouses, and priests. People could indulge in behaviors that the daylight would not tolerate. Court records are filled with accounts of brawls, thefts, and other mischief that took place in the dead of night. A time when, as we now know, a significant portion of the population was actually awake. But the night's activity wasn't just confined to taverns. You might hear the creak of a wagon wheel on the road. Not everyone worked from sunup to sundown. Certain trades were, by their nature, nocturnal. Bakers would be up during their watch, not sleeping, but beginning the long, slow process of preparing their dough for the morning's bread. The smell of a wood miner's fire of un being brought to life might be the first hint of their activity. Millers, too, often worked at night, especially if their mill was powered by a river whose flow was strongest in the cool, still air. The rhythmic, groaning pulse of a watermill could be a familiar, even comforting, sound in the night for those who lived nearby. There's a significant and still minus unresolved historical question about how these different watches interacted. Did the pious man on his knees in prayer and the drunken gambler in the tavern inhabit completely separate nocturnal worlds? Or was there an overlap? Did people move between these spheres? Perhaps starting their watch with a quiet chore and then slipping out to join friends for a drink. The evidence is sparse, but it suggests a more fluid reality. The night was a complex social tapestry, woven with threads of devotion, labor, intimacy, and debauchery. You listen again from your window. The singing has stopped. The laughter has faded. The tavern is likely closing, its patrons stumbling home through the pitch-black lanes. You hear a door slam in the distance, a door bark once, and then the deep silence returns, even more profound than before. It's a reminder that you're quiet. Domestic watch is just one of many possible ways to experience this time. The night is not a monolith. It contains multitudes. And as you turn away from the window and back toward the glowing embers of your own hearth, you feel a renewed sense of comfort in the peaceful, predictable rhythm of your own small world, a safe harbor in the vast and varied sea of the night. The fire on the hearth, which you revived with such care, has now burned down for a second time. It has returned to a bed of soft, pulsing embers. Its light a faint, deep red. The room is growing darker again. The shadows creeping back in from the corners. A deep chill seems to be seeping through the walls. A cold that has little to do with the temperature. It is the cold of the deepest part of the night, the hour just before the faintest hint of dawn. And with that chill comes a familiar feeling. It starts in your limbs, a pleasant, leaden heaviness. Your shoulders, which had felt light and rested, now begin to ache with a gentle, insistent weariness. A yawn escapes your lips, wide and unrestrained. You see the woman across the hearth mirroring your yawn a moment later. A silent, biological consensus is being reached in the room. The watch is coming to an end. This is not a reluctant feeling. You are not fighting off sleepiness, wishing the watch could last longer. The return of drowsiness feels as natural and as welcome as the waking did an hour or two ago. It is the turning of an internal tide. Your body, having used this quiet interlude to perform its subtle tasks, is now signaling that it is ready for the next phase. The brain, having processed, prayed, and planned, is ready to be quiet again. You get up from your stool by the fire, your movements slow and deliberate. You take the poker one last time and carefully bank the fire, covering the embers with ash, tucking them in for their second sleep, just as you are about to tuck yourself in. The room plunges into near-minus total darkness once more, the only light the faint, residual glow that leaks through the ash, a promise of the fire that will be woken again at sunrise. You make your way back to the bed. The straw mattress rustles as you climb in, a sound that now seems deeply comforting, an invitation to rest. You find your hollow, the familiar depression that fits your body. You arrange the bolsters, not for long a pride vigil this time, but allowing yourself to slump a little lower. You are not preparing for wake arsenals now. You are surrendering to the pull of slumber. This feeling, this gentle but inexorable pull toward the second sleep, was a well-misunderstood phenomenon. It was not the same as the bone-minus deep exhaustion you felt at the end of the day. This was a softer, gentler kind of sleepiness. Medical texts from the period often described it in poetic terms, as a sweet dew or a gentle vapor rising in the brain. They advised that for the second sleep, you should now lie on your left side. This would, they theorized, allow the nourishing heat of the liver to rise and warm the heart, leading to a more peaceful and dream-filled rest. How many people actually remembered to switch sides is, like so much of this intimate history, a matter of speculation for historians. The others in the household are doing the same. The soft sounds of resettlement fill the room, the rustle of bedding, a final soft cough, a gentle sigh of contentment. The house is shutting down once more. The brief period of wakeful, humming activity is over. The entire organism of the household is preparing to sink back into a collective, synchronized rest. You pull a heavy woolen blanket up to your chin. It smells faintly of wood smoke and straw. The warmth of your own body begins to create a cozy cocoon in the cold night air. Your thoughts, which were so clear and sharp during the watch, now begin to lose their focus. They unravel, becoming soft and hazy. You are not thinking anymore. You are simply feeling. You feel the weight of the blanket, the support of the mattress, the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of your own chest. There is no anxiety about the coming morning, no dread of the alarm clock. The sun will be your signal to rise, and that is still hours away. So now, there is nothing to do, nowhere to be, except here, in this warm bed, in this dark and silent room. On the very edge of the second great ocean of sleep, you close your eyes, and with a final, deep breath, you let the current take you. You are adrift. The transition into this second sleep is different from the first. The first was a heavy, rapid plunge into a dreamless abyss, a surrender driven by physical exhaustion. This is a gentler, more gradual descent. You feel yourself floating in a calm, dark sea, your thoughts like soft, glowing jellyfish pulsing lazily in the depths. You are not quite asleep, but no longer truly awake. inhabiting that magical, liminal state the French call au revoir. And then, the dreams begin. They do not burst forth in chaotic fragments like they might have in the first sleep. They unfold. A landscape materializes around you, detailed and coherent. You are walking down a path you have never seen before, yet it feels deeply familiar. The light is strange, not the harsh light of the sun, but a soft, ethereal glow that seems to emanate from the very air itself. The dreams of the second sleep were widely considered to be the true dreams. They were more vivid, more narrative, and more memorable. While the first sleep was for the body, the second sleep was for the spirit and the imagination. Renaissance physicians and philosophers wrote extensively about this, theorizing that with the body fully rested and digestion complete, the soul was freer to wander in the realms of fantasy and revelation. They believed these dreams were more likely to be prophetic, to contain important insights or divine messages. You find yourself in a bustling marketplace. The stalls are laden with impossible fruits that shimmer with internal light. The merchants are people you know, but their faces are younger, their clothes from another time. You are having a conversation with your grandfather, who passed away years ago. His voice is perfectly clear, and he's giving you a piece of advice. The advice is strange, allegorical, yet you understand it perfectly. It feels less like a memory and more like a genuine visitation. This is the quality that made the dreams of the second sleep so significant to your ancestors. They felt real, intensely, vividly real. The barrier between the dreaming self and the waking self was thin, almost non-existent. People often reported waking from their second sleep with the emotional residue of the dream clinging to them for hours. A feeling of joy, sorrow, or profound peace. A particularly powerful dream would be the first topic of conversation at the morning meal, its narrative recounted in detail, its meaning debated and analyzed by the entire family. There's a fascinating, ongoing debate among sleep scientists and historians about why this might be. Is there a biological reason that dreams in the latter half of the night are more vivid? Modern sleep science would say yes. We know that the proportion of our REM sleep, the stage most associated with narrative dreaming, increases in the later sleep cycles. Your ancestors, without the benefit of EEG machines, had arrived at the exact same conclusion through millennia of lived experience. They knew, instinctively, that the dreams that came just before dawn were the ones that mattered. In your dream, the scene shifts. You are now standing on a cliff overlooking the churning sea. The sky is a dramatic swirl of purple and orange. You are not afraid. You feel a sense of immense power and possibility. The dream has a story, a progression. It is not just a random collection of images. It is an experience. It is a journey. The memory of these dreams was also thought to be a matter of practice. People were culturally conditioned to pay attention to them, to value them. They would often keep a dream journal, in a metaphorical sense, holding on to the details of a dream upon waking, turning them over and over in their minds to fix them in their memory. The watch, that period of quiet wakefulness, was the perfect time to review the dreams of the first sleep. Similarly, the first moments of morning wakefulness were dedicated to capturing the elusive narratives of the second. You are still in the dream, but you can feel it coming to an end. The vivid colors begin to fade. The sounds of the sea grow distant. The narrative is dissolving, like a beautiful sandcastle being washed away by a gentle tide. You are beginning to surface, rising slowly from the deep, imaginative world of the second sleep toward the shores of the waking world. But you are not leaving the dream behind empty-handed. You are carrying with you its emotional echo, its strange and beautiful images, and the mysterious piece of advice from your grandfather, a final, precious gift from the lost world of the night. You are still floating in the gentle currents of the second sleep, but something is changing. It's a subtle shift in the world outside your shuttered window. A change you are not consciously aware of but that your body registers with ancient, primal sensitivity. Though faint, grey light is beginning to seep through the cracks. It doesn't illuminate. It just makes the darkness a little less absolute. And then, a sound begins. The first, tentative chirp of a bird, soon answered by another. The dawn chorus is beginning. This is your natural alarm clock. But now, imagine a different sound. A new sound that slices through the gentle fabric of the dawn. It's a sharp, metallic hiss, followed by a sudden, bright flare of light that casts dark, unfamiliar shadows against your window shutters. Out on the street, a man with a long pole is moving from one cast-iron lamppost to the next. He is a lamplighter, and he is not extinguishing the lights of the night. He is igniting the lights of a new era. This is the arrival of the gas lamp, first in the grand squares of London and Paris in the early 19th century, and then spreading, slowly but inexorably, through every city and town. It's a light unlike any you have ever known. It is not the soft, dancing, organic glow of a candle or a fire. It is a steady, brilliant, almost unnaturally white glare. It doesn't just push the darkness back. It vanquishes it. It lays siege to the night. And it wins. This new light changes everything. Streets that were once treacherous, pitch-minus black passages, navigated only by the brave or the desperate with a flickering lantern, are now bathed in a constant, reliable illumination. The night is no longer a barrier to activity. Shops can stay open later. Factories can run extra shifts. People can visit friends, go to the theater, or simply stroll through the city in the evening with a sense of safety and confidence that was previously unimaginable. At first, this seems like a miraculous, unalloyed good. It is a triumph of progress, a symbol of humanity's victory over the primeval dark. But it has an unintended and profound consequence. It begins to erode the ancient, to-minus-part rhythm of your sleep. The bright glare of the gas lamp seeps into your home. It filters through the curtains, creating a perpetual twilight in your bedroom. This constant, low-level light pollution begins to interfere with your body's production of melatonin, the hormone that regulates your sleep-wake cycle. The clear, unambiguous signal of darkness that once told your body it was time to sleep is now muddled. Furthermore, the new, exciting possibilities of the illuminated evening mean you are staying up later, instead of retiring to bed shortly after dusk. You might now spend hours reading a cheap, mass-produced novel under the bright light of a new paraffin lamp in your own home. You might go out to a public house that is now a beacon of light and activity until late into the night. Your bedtime is pushed back. Later and later, you are no longer living by the sun's clock, but by the gas companies. Historians studying this transition have called it the colonization of the night. It was a fundamental reordering of society's relationship with time. The night, which was once a time for rest, intimacy, and quiet contemplation, was being transformed into a new frontier for work and for commerce. There's a vigorous and ongoing academic debate about the speed of this change. Was it a sudden revolution, or a slow, creeping evolution that took generations? The consensus leans toward a gradual shift, with the old patterns of segmented sleep persisting in rural areas long after they had vanished from the brightly lit cities. As you lie in your bed, the familiar, comforting darkness has been replaced by this strange, grayish-blue urban glow. The sounds are different, too. The silence of the deep night is now filled with the clatter of carriages on the street, the distant shouts of people returning from an evening's entertainment. The world no longer shuts down, and as your bedtime is pushed later into the evening, that first, heavy, restorative sleep is compressed. The gentle, natural waking in the middle of the night happens less and less, and when it does, it is no longer a welcome interlude, but an annoying interruption to a sleep that you now feel is too short to begin with. The unwelcome glare of the gas lamp is not just illuminating the street, it is burning away a pattern of sleep that has defined human life for thousands of years. The gas lamp may have conquered the night, but another, even more relentless force is about to conquer time itself. You feel it before you hear it. A low, rhythmic, ground minus shaking thud that seems to vibrate in your very bones. It's the sound of industry, the steam engine, the power loom, the relentless, insatiable machinery of the factory. And then you hear a sound that rips through the dawn air with a brutal, piercing shriek. It's the factory whistle. That whistle is a tyrant. It pays no attention to the sun, the seasons, or the ancient rhythms of your body. It screams at a precise, unyielding, man-minus made time 6 o'clock in the morning, on the dot, and it demands your presence. You can no longer wake with the gentle dawn chorus or the first grey light. You must wake to the whistle. Your day is no longer governed by the natural cycle of light and dark, but by the rigid, unforgiving timetable of the factory floor. This is the Industrial Revolution, and it is the final, decisive blow to the world of segmented sleep. The new economy requires a new kind of worker, one who is punctual, disciplined, and capable of working for a long, continuous stretch of 10, 12, or even 14 hours. The fluid, to minus spark night of your ancestors is a luxury this new world cannot afford. Your entire life must now be Ray-minus engineered for efficiency. Sleep is no longer a complex, multi-minus stage journey of rest, contemplation, and dreaming. It is a functional necessity, a block of time for refueling the human machine so that it can perform its duties the next day. The idea of waking for an hour or two in the middle of the night to pray, chirp, or mend a stocking is now not just impractical. It is economic suicide. If you are awake at 2, you are wasting precious energy that is owed to the factory owner. The pressure to consolidate your sleep into a single, uninterrupted block is immense. Your bedtime, already pushed later by artificial light, is now fixed. You must get to bed at a reasonable hour to have any hope of feeling functional when the whistle shrieks. The night is shortened, compressed, and stripped of its former richness. It becomes a blank, empty space between 2 grueling shifts of work. Historians of labor and society see this as one of the most profound and often overlooked transformations in human history. It was a change in consciousness itself. The notion of time thrift, famously preached by figures like Benjamin Franklin with his saying "time is money," became the dominant ideology. Every moment had to be accounted for, to be used productively. The quiet, contemplative, and seemingly unproductive hour of the watch was anathema to this new mindset. There is a subtle but fierce debate among scholars about the human cost of this transition. Some argue that the shift to consolidated sleep was a natural adaptation to new working conditions. Others contend that it was a violent imposition, a form of temporal discipline that did lasting damage to our collective physical and mental health. They point to the explosion of literature in the late 19th century about a new and terrifying medical condition, insomnia. You feel this new pressure in your body. You go to bed exhausted, your mind still reeling from the deafening noise and frantic pace of the factory. You crave the oblivion of a long, deep sleep. But your body, still programmed with its ancient biphasic rhythm, might still nudge you awake at midnight. But now, this waking is not a peaceful return to consciousness. It is a source of intense anxiety. You lie in bed, your heart pounding, thinking, "I have to be at the factory in 5 hours. I must get back to sleep." You are now at war with your own natural rhythms. You toss and turn. The gentle watch transformed into a frustrating, desperate struggle for unconsciousness. The very effort to force yourself to sleep is what keeps you awake. The quiet harbor of the night has become a torture chamber. The factory whistle, even in its silence, haunts your bed, a constant, ticking clock in your mind, reminding you that your rest is no longer your own. It belongs to the machine. You lie there in the dark, caught in this new and terrible struggle. The factory whistle is silent, but its echo is a ghost in your mind. You are awake when you are supposed to be asleep, and the anxiety this causes is a tight knot in your stomach. You feel broken, faulty. You feel alone in this struggle, but you are not. All across the brightly lit cities, in countless bedrooms, Millions of people are having the exact same experience. They are waking up in the dead of night, just as their ancestors did for millennia. But instead of feeling a calm sense of purpose, they feel a jolt of panic. And a society that now worships at the altar of efficiency needs a name for this collective failure. So a new word begins to gain currency, whispered by doctors and printed in the pages of newspapers and magazines. Insomnia. It is a clinical, serious-minded sounding word. It transforms your experience from a simple, natural pattern into a medical condition, a pathology, a disorder of the nerves. The doctor you visit now is not the wise old man who would have pronounced you healthy. This new doctor, trained in the latest theories, listens to your complaint of waking for an hour or two at midnight with a look of grave concern. He doesn't talk about humoral balance or the body's natural rhythms. He speaks of neurasthenia, of the strain of modern urban life, of a nervous system overtaxed by the noise of the city and the relentless pace of work. You are perfectly normal. Ancestral habit has been diagnosed as a failure, a symptom of your inability to cope with the brave new world. And where there is a new disease, commerce is never far behind. You begin to see advertisements in the newspaper. They show haggard miners-looking figures, their faces etched with the agony of a sleepless night, and beside them, the miraculous cure, a bottle of dark, syrupy liquid, dubbed as Bantam's celebrated nocturnal elixir. The advertisement proclaims, restores the nerves, ensures a full night of unbroken slumber. These patent medicines become ubiquitous. They promise to silence the internal clock that is waking you up. What is in them? Often, it's a potent unregulated cocktail of alcohol, opium, or other narcotics. They don't cure you. They bludgeon your consciousness into submission. They knock you out, providing a chemical imitation of the consolidated sleep that your body is resisting. And they are, of course, highly addictive, creating a vicious cycle of dependency. Historians and medical sociologists still debate this very question. Did the industrial age create a new epidemic of sleepsons? Or did it simply invent a disease for a biological rhythm it could no longer accommodate? It's a profound chicken minus and minus egg problem. Did the stress of factory work genuinely disrupt people's sleep? Or did the demand for consolidated sleep simply make people pathologically anxious about their ancient, before-sick pattern? The answer is likely a complex mix of both. The cultural memory of the watch begins to fade with astonishing speed, within a single generation. What was once a universally understood and valued part of the night becomes a forgotten relic. Grandparents who try to tell their grandchildren about the first sleep and the second sleep are met with blank, uncomforted stares. The old ways are dismissed as unscientific, as the rambling of old folks who didn't know any better. Progress has declared that a single 8-hour block of sleep is the correct, healthy, and efficient way to rest. Any deviation is a sign of illness. So you lie in your bed, a bottle of some patent tonic on your nightstand. You are no longer just a person who is awake. You are now an insomniac. Your anxiety has been given a name, and your body's natural rhythm has been given a diagnosis. The entire cultural and medical establishment is united in telling you that your experience is wrong. The memory of the watch has been erased, written over with the clinical, anxious diagnosis of a sleepless night. The world of the two sleeps is gone. It has been paved over by the asphalt of the industrial age, its memory suppressed and medicalized. But when you bury something so fundamental, so deeply ingrained in the human experience, it doesn't just disappear. It leaves behind ghosts, faint, spectral traces of its existence, hidden in the very language you speak, waiting to be rediscovered. You find one of these ghosts in an old, forgotten word, the French term Dieu avale, which you've heard before, perfectly captures that hazy, dreamy, creative state between sleeping and waking. It's a word that has no single, perfect equivalent in modern English, because the experience it describes that liminal, purposeful wake signals of the watch no longer has a place in your culture. The word is an artifact, a linguistic fossil from a lost world of consciousness. You find another echo in literature. You might be reading a classic novel, perhaps something by Charles Dickens or Jane Austen, and you come across a strange passage. A character is described as waking after their first sleep, or someone mentions that an event happened between the sleeps. To the modern reader, these phrases are confusing, perhaps even typos, but you understand. You recognize the ghost. You are reading a casual, matter minus of minus fact reference to a daily reality that was so common. The author didn't even think to explain it. Literary scholars have spent decades examining these texts, realizing that they are peppered with these subtle but significant clues to a forgotten sleep culture. Even our fairy tales and nursery rhymes are haunted. Think of the classic line, "'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." The power of that image comes from the assumption that a house should be stirring in the middle of the night. The extraordinary thing was the complete and total stillness. The line is a negative image of a world where the quiet stirrings of the watch were the norm. The most heated debates among historical linguists revolve around these phantom phrases. They shift through old letters, diaries, and legal depositions, looking for these casual mentions. A phrase like "a first sleep friend" might be a clue. What does it mean? Does it refer to a bedfellow, someone you share your first sleep with? Or is it a more metaphorical term for an intimate acquaintance with whom you share secrets during the watch? Every newly discovered phrase is a tiny piece of a puzzle, helping to reconstruct a world we didn't even know we had lost. You see the ghost in art, too. You look at old paintings of bedrooms, particularly from the 16th and 17th centuries. You notice the beds. They seem unusually short. You notice the huge stacks of pillows and bolsters, designed to prop a person up. The painting is a silent testament to the upright, semi-vigilant posture of segmented sleep. The artist was not painting a strained, uncomfortable scene. He was painting a bedroom as it actually was, for a sleep that was actually slept. And perhaps the most powerful ghost of all is the one that resides in your own body. You have those nights, even now. Nights when you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, for no reason at all. Your mind is calm, clear. You don't feel groggy, you just feel awake. And your first reaction is that modern, conditioned panic. Oh no, I'm awake. I need to get back to sleep. But no, a new thought gently pushes that panic aside. You recognize the feeling. This is the watch. This is the echo of a billion nights of your ancestors. A whisper from your own deep, biological past. The rhythm is not dead. It is dormant. It is a ghost within your own genes, waiting for a moment of quiet to make its presence felt. The world may have forgotten, but the language, the art, and your own body have not. They are all archives, holding the faint, shimmering memory of a time when the night was not a single, dark void, but a rich and varied landscape, with 2 quiet harbors for rest and calm, moonlit sea of wake-up signals in between. The ghosts are all around you, and now, finally, you can see them. The ghost in your own body. That gentle nudge into wake-up signals at 3 in the morning has not gone unnoticed by the modern world. But this time, the people noticing it are not doctors looking to diagnose a disease. They are sleep scientists, in quiet, darkened laboratories, armed with electrodes and computers, and they are accidentally stumbling upon the lost world of your ancestors. The story begins in the early 1990s, with a groundbreaking experiment led by a psychiatrist and sleep researcher named Thomas Ware. He wanted to see what would happen to human sleep patterns if you removed the primary influence of the modern world, artificial light. He took a group of volunteers and plunged them into an environment that mimicked the natural conditions of a pre-industrial winter. For 14 hours every day, they were deprived of all artificial light. They lived in total darkness. For the first few weeks, nothing much changed. The volunteers continued to sleep in a single, consolidated block. But then, slowly, something remarkable began to happen. Their sleep patterns started to shift. They would fall asleep as usual, but then, after about 4 hours of deep sleep, they would wake up, naturally, gently, without any alarm. They would then remain awake for 1 to 3 hours, in a state they described as deeply calm and meditative, a kind of quiet rest that was neither fully asleep nor fully awake. And after this interval, they would fall back asleep for another 4-hour block, without any prompting, without any knowledge of the historical record. Their bodies had spontaneously reverted to the ancient, biphasic pattern of segmented sleep. They had rediscovered the first sleep, the watch, and the second sleep. It was still there, hardwired into their biology, just waiting for the right environmental cues to emerge. Whereas experiment, and others that followed, sent a shockwave through the sleep science community. It challenged the fundamental assumption that an 8-hour, uninterrupted block of sleep was the biological norm for humans. Suddenly, the historical evidence painstakingly gathered by scholars like Roger E. Kirk was not just a historical curiosity, it was a biological reality. The two fields, history and science, had collided, and in doing so, they validated each other. The old diaries and the modern brain scans were telling the exact same story. The scientific community is still buzzing with the implications of this. There is now a vigorous and ongoing debate about what this means for modern sleep problems. Is it possible that the insomnia epidemic is not an epidemic of disease, but an epidemic of a mismatched environment? Are millions of people suffering simply because their modern, light-saturated world is forcing their bodies into a sleep pattern that is unnatural for them? Some scientists and therapists are now experimenting with new approaches. Instead of telling a patient who waits in the night to try harder to get back to sleep, they might suggest the opposite. Don't fight it, they say. Get up, sit in a dim room, meditate, read a book, do something quiet and calming. Accept this period of wakefulness. When you feel sleepy again, go back to bed. In essence, they are trying to teach us how to have a proper watch, to strip away the anxiety and panic that modernity has attached to it. Of course, this is not a simple solution. The factory whistle may be gone, but the demands of a 9- to -5 or later workday are just as rigid. Most people cannot afford the luxury of a 2-hour waking interval in the middle of their night. But the knowledge itself is revolutionary. It reframes the entire problem. It suggests that your body is not broken. It is the world you are living in, with its constant light and its rigid schedules, that is out of sync. The laboratory, with its blinking lights and complex machinery, has become an unlikely time machine. It has allowed us to look back, to see with scientific certainty a biological rhythm that we had completely forgotten. Modern science has not discovered something new. It has rediscovered something incredibly old. It has found the ghost in the machine, and confirmed that the strange, part sleep of your ancestors is not a relic of the past, but a deep and abiding part of who you are. And so, here you are. You are back in your own bed. In your own time, the straw mattress is gone, replaced by the soft, yielding supportive memory foam or pocketed coils. The darkness is not the profound, absolute black of a world without electricity. It is a modern darkness, punctuated by the tiny, glowing dot of a charging light or the faint, ambient glow from a street lamp filtering through your blinds. The silence is not the silence of nature, but the low, steady hum of the modern world at rest, the soft whir of a fan, the distant rumble of a passing car. Your goal tonight is the opposite of everything you have just experienced. Your ambition is for a single, long, unbroken night of sleep, a seamless, 8-hour voyage from the shores of evening to the shores of morning, with no scheduled stops in the quiet harbor of the watch. You seek not 2 sleeps, but one long, continuous oblivion. This quest for a single block of sleep is, you now know, a profoundly modern one. It is a habit forged in the glow of the gas lamp and enforced by the shriek of the factory whistle. For most of human history, Your goal would have seemed strange, even unhealthy, a sign of a sluggish, unbalanced constitution. No, it is the gold standard, the very definition of a good night's sleep. When your alarm clock grips you from the depths of your slumber tomorrow morning, you may experience the familiar, groggy disorientation, that feeling of being pulled from a deep well, your mind still thick with the sludge of dreams. This is the price of consolidated sleep. By compressing our rest, by eliminating the gentle, meditative buffer of the watch, we have made the transition from sleeping to waking a more violent, jarring event. Our ancestors, rising gently from the lighter end of their second sleep with the rising sun, likely experienced a smoother, more graceful dawn. And so, a quiet debate continues in the quiet halls of academia and science. Has our modern, monophasic sleep pattern come at a cost? Are the high levels of anxiety, stress, and sleep disorders that plague the modern world a direct consequence of this shift? Are we a species that has forced itself into a rhythm that is fundamentally at odds with its own biology? And are we now paying the price? The question hangs in the air, as quiet and as vast as the night itself. But these are questions for the daylight. For now, you can let them go. The story is told. And despite all you have learned about the lost world of the two sleeps, your task tonight is simple. It is to embrace the world you live in. It is to seek that one long, peaceful, unbroken rest. So let the hum of your modern world be a lullaby. Let the soft glow of the charger be a distant, friendly star. You are home, in your own time, in your own bed, and a long, peaceful night awaits. And now the story of the two sleeps finds its own quiet rest. The journey through the fire-lit nights of the past is over. And you are left here, floating gently in the soft, quiet darkness of your own room. The path we walk together now fades, like a trail into a deep and peaceful forest. There is nothing left to follow, nothing left to understand. My voice can become just another sound like the distant wind, or the soft rhythm of your own breathing. Perhaps you can feel that gentle, welcome heaviness, the first sign that your own first sleep is calling to you. You can let go of every word I have said, let them dissolve like sugar in warm water, leaving only a feeling of sweetness and calm behind. It doesn't matter if you are listening anymore. Your mind can drift and wander to any place that feels safe and comfortable. There is no need to try to sleep. Sleep is not something you do, it is something you allow. A gentle tide that you allow to lift you and carry you away. And if a thought should arise, you can just watch it float by a single, puffy cloud in a vast, peaceful sky. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you are drifting on the slow, easy current of the night toward the quiet shores of your own deep and restorative rest. The story now rests. If you find you need a little more time, there are other gentle journeys waiting on the channel. Otherwise, simply allow this silence to carry you into sleep. Good night.